Hi, my name is Alex Whitney, and today we're going to be discussing
Göbekli Tepe. Göbekli Tepe.
Oh.
Göbekli Tepe.
Yes, that is the one and only Graham Hancock saying,
Göbekli Tepe.
there we go. And I will be using that soundbite throughout, although I will be saying Göbekli Tepe. Göbekli Tepe. You can't say it without sounding odd. It's such a weird phrase. Say it out loud with me. Göbekli Tepe. Tepe? Teep. Tep. I listened to an audiobook, a book we'll talk about in a bit, that kind of discusses Göbekli Tepe, and the narrator pronounced it about 5 different times throughout the book. It's a Turkish word, I think, or maybe even older than that. I don't know if we'll get into that. That'd be very interesting, the etymology of that word. So why Göbekli Tepe? Why is that so in right now? So hot right now? And it has become somewhat of a muse for the different people that we discussed on Conspiracy 101. Graham Hancock obviously comes to mind, and the reason for that is because it's changed the mainstream view of a certain period of time when we thought we were just hunter-gatherers, and it turns out there was some kind of proto-civilization going on, enough to build temples, enough to build really big monuments. Göbekli Tepe is so far dated in the mainstream, which is very strange because they'll say that the dates for the mainstream are wrong, the various people who we were talking about and who we will see writing various blog posts and articles. But when the mainstream lines up with what they want to say, then they'll say that it's correct. But for the time being, we'll go with the consensus, and that is that it's very old, and it shows a lot of work's gone into it, work that needed to be brought from elsewhere. So it's a collection of people. It's not just sort of one crazy guy who's just had his life to spend. It is a team of people who have worked really hard to create these temples, seemingly temples, a very long time ago, in what is now modern-day Turkey. But what's really important, and the first thing that we're going to talk about, is... I've just ruined it. There we go. Man holding penis and flanked by leopards is world's oldest narrative carving. I'm not going to talk about that. We're gonna move on. But I thought we should just start with that because it's very important. It's a beautiful picture, isn't it? He's holding his willy. Right. There are many, many different sites that talk about Göbekli Tepe.
Göbekli Tepe.
And obviously, we're going to start with the big boy, that is Graham Hancock. Now, his website has lots of different information about Göbekli Tepe. He likes talking about it, but he hasn't really written a great deal about it. The person who has written a specific book, allegedly, about Göbekli Tepe is Andrew Collins. Now, for some of you that might ring bells. Before I get into it, let me just explain what I'm going to do. We're going to talk about Göbekli Tepe, what it is, why it's important for these groups of people, the archaeologists, the sky archaeologists. I've forgotten what that word's called. Archaeoastronomists. And then we'll look at some of the rebuttals to that in some articles. And we'll also look at the UNESCO World Heritage Site and have a look at some really nice pictures of Göbekli Tepe.
Göbekli Tepe.
Because it is really interesting, and seeing through the pictures is actually kind of nice. So if you want to scrub through and just see the pictures, fair enough. Or just Google it, it's awesome. So, Andrew Collins. Why do I know Andrew Collins? I know Andrew Collins because he wrote books about Atlantis, or a book about Atlantis, which I found really interesting. It was well put together, but he put Atlantis in the Caribbean, which I don't necessarily agree with. I think as far as I can remember, this was a very long time ago, he put it in the Caribbean. If I'm wrong, please let me know in the comments. What I didn't know, he's kind of become not known for Atlantis now, but known for trying to find real-world locations of places in the Bible. And he's seemingly very good at that, talking through it, describing it, writing books about it. But what he's done with his Göbekli Tepe book which I listened to last week, is basically just not really talked about Göbekli Tepe and just talked about the stuff that he knows well, which is as you can see, books by Mr. Collins, Genesis of the Gods. He's skewed it to a way that so that he can sort of talk about what he's good at, which is angels, fallen race, the Nephilim. We briefly talked about them in Giants, the first episode we ever did, and we will come back to them. Biblical conspiracies are really interesting, and often a lot of conspiracies have a biblical tint to them without realizing it, like flat Earth conspiracy that we talked about. So his Göbekli Tepe book isn't necessarily very...
Göbekli Tepe.
It's not as...
Göbekli Tepe.
as I would like it to be.
Göbekli Tepe.
Shush. Graham, shush. Right. June 2014, AOM. I don't know what, article of the month, maybe? By Andrew Collins. AndrewCollins.com. So this is 2014. Göbekli Tepe was rediscovered in the 90s, mid-90s. So it's been around for a long time, and they've slowly come to realise that it's very old. We are pleased and honoured to welcome back as June Author of the Month, Andrew Collins. Join Andrew during the AOM message boards to discuss his new book, Göbekli Tepe, Genesis of the Gods. There you go. So it came out in 2014. Göbekli Tepe is a name familiar to anyone interested in ancient mystery subject. Billed as the oldest stone temple in the world, it is composed of a series of megalithic structures containing rings of beautifully carved T-shaped pillars. Think Stonehenge, but with like another block on top, so it's like a T. It sits on a mountain range in southeast Turkey, just 8 miles, 13 kilometers, from the ancient city of Urfa. I'm trying to think how they pronounced it. Urfa. Close to the traditional site of the Garden of Eden. It's not that close. It's not that close. Here, for the past 10,000 years, its secrets have remained hidden beneath an artificial belly-shaped mound of earth some 330 by 220 yards, 300 by 200 meters in size. They basically covered it up. They would seemingly were finished with a temple at some point for whatever reason, and they would bury it. Agriculture and animal husbandry were barely known when Göbekli Tepe was built, and the roaming fertile landscape of southwest Asia we are told, primitive hunter-gatherers whose sole existence revolved around survival on a day-to-day basis. So like I said, at the time they think it was built, they think the majority of humans were hunter-gatherers, and any type of animal husbandry, which is basically just rearing sheep or cows or having, looking after them so that they can give you stuff, or understanding how crops work and actually farming, rather than just finding things, was either non-existent or in its really early infancy. But when you compare that to how sophisticated Göbekli Tepe is, they don't mar up very well. So something's wrong. Either the dates for Göbekli Tepe are wrong, or more likely, the line where we went from hunter-gatherers to farmers and civilization and agriculture just needs to be pushed back a bit. And by a bit, I mean like thousands of years. So here we go. This is I don't like it when maps do this. Okay, so the dark bits of the sea. This really, it messes with my eyes. So if you don't know, I did geography at school, at university, and I don't like when maps do it this way around. I prefer light being sea, dark being land, but no, don't. So we've got Turkey here, modern day Turkey, Iran, Syria, Iraq, Armenia. Armenia, old school Armenia goes bigger than Armenia now, so it's very awkward. So Göbekli Tepe is sort of here. And the cradle of civilization is the Euphrates and the Tigris, and this area was just a really good place for civilization to occur. Now, it's very arid and deserty. You think of Iran, Syria, Iraq, very dusty, not necessarily very fertile, but back in the day, thousands of years ago, it was. Same with Egypt and the Nile Delta and all that. So, what is Göbekli Tepe? Who created it? And why? More pressingly, why did its builders bury their creation at the end of its useful life? These are questions I ask in a new book, Göbekli Tepe, Genesis of the Gods. He doesn't answer them, but he asks them. I'm sorry, I'm being really mean to Andrew Collins. I don't mean to be mean. I just expected something from his book and I didn't get it. In which I provide compelling evidence that the myths of the Watchers of the Book of Enoch and the Anunnaki of Mesopotamian myth and legend are memories of the Göbekli builders and their impact on the rise of civilization. I believe also that Göbekli Tepe was constructed by a hunter-gatherer population still in fear following a devastating cataclysm that nearly destroyed the world, a comet impact that science today recognises having taken place 12,900 years ago, aka the Younger Dryas event. Is it called the Younger Dryas event? Younger Dryas cataclysm? I don't remember. With terrifying aftershocks that lasted for several hundred years afterwards. So you can see where this is going, and if you've ever read any Graham Hancock books, you know this lines up beautifully with his, and that's why he's probably featured quite heavily. Human hybrids. Yet it seems unlikely that those who came up with a plan to counter the innate fear of another cataclysm, something that visionary and writer, Barbara Hand Clow so aptly calls catastrophobia, were the indigenous population. This appears to have been orchestrated by members of an incoming culture. Atlanteans? Oh. Composed of groups of shamans, warriors, hunters, and stone tool specialists with immense power and charisma. Roll a 20 on charisma. Their territories across which they traded different forms of flint, as well as hematite, used as red ochre, stretched from the Carpathian Mountains in the west to the Russian steppes and plain in the east. More incredibly, anatomical evidence points to them being of striking appearance, tall, with extremely long heads, high cheekbones, long faces, large jaws, and a strong brow ridges, which have been seen as evidence that they were Neanderthal. It changes that pronunciation. Like, historically, people from my area would say Neanderthal, but I think it's Neanderthal now, isn't it? Human hybrids. So, who were these people? The rise of the Swiderians. The answer is the Swiderians, whose mining operations in Poland's Holy Cross Mountains are among the earliest evidence of organised mining activities anywhere in the world. This advanced society, who thrived in both Central and Eastern Europe around the time of the comet impact of 10,900 BC, 12,900 years ago, mixing up his dates, I don't like it when they do that, was responsible for the foundation of various important post-Swiderian cultures of the Mesolithic age as far north as Norway, Finland, and Sweden, and as far south as the Caucasus Mountains, and as far east as the Upper Volga River in central Russia. With Swiderians, highly advanced culture, which included a sophisticated stone tool technology, was derived from their distant ancestors, the Eastern Gravetian peoples that thrived between 30,000 and 19,000 BC in what is today's Czech Republic and further east on the Russian plain. In around 10,500 BC, I believe that the Swiderian groups moved south from the East European plain into eastern Anatolia, Turkey. Here they gained control of the regional trade in black volcanic glass known as obsidian at places like Bingöl Mountain in the Armenian highlands and Nemrutdağ, an extinct volcano close to the shores of Lake Van, Turkey's largest inland sea. This brought them into contact with communities who would later be responsible for the construction of the Göbekli Tepe around 9,500 to 9,000 BC. The ritual purpose. Everything suggests the Swiderians possessed a sophisticated cosmology gained in part from their cousins, the Soltrians of Central and Western Europe, who are themselves related to the Eastern Gravetian peoples. They believed in a cosmic tree supporting the sky, world entered via a great rift, the fork or split in the Milky Way caused by the presence of the stellar dust and debris, corresponding to the position of the northern heavens occupied by the stars of Cygnus and the celestial swan, aka the Northern Cross. Again, this is getting into the archaeoastronomy side of things, how the ancient people believed in stars. The movement of stars is really important to them, that's what I'm trying to get at. The Swiderians believed that also that birds were a symbol of astral flight, and that this was the manner in which the shaman could reach the sky world. In Europe, the bird most commonly associated with these beliefs and practices is the swan, while in Southwest Asia it was the vulture, a primary symbol of death and transformation in early Neolithic age. Both birds are identified with Cygnus constellation. There you go, there's the Cygnus constellation. Why? Using this guise, the shaman could enter the sky world and counter. Oh yeah, Ionaska is talked about a lot. I can see it. I can see it in your head going. I can talk about Ionaska. Yes, they are. And you might not talk about it here. Using this guise, the shaman could enter the sky world and counter the actions of supernatural creatures as responsible for cataclysms like the comic impact of 10,900 BC, referred to by scientists today as the Younger Dryas boundary event. This cosmic trickster was seen to take the form of a sky fox or sky wolf, embodied perhaps in leaping foxes carved in relief on the inner faces of key pillars at Göbekli Tepe.
Göbekli Tepe.
And remembered also as the Fenris wolf responsible for causing Ragnarok, a major cataclysm preserved in Norse mythology. A lot of what you'll see about these various authors that are like this is that they like to say that lots of old myths are actually very much related and have some kind of common source. Atlanteans. All across Europe and into Southwest Asia, accounts exist of supernatural foxes and wolves that have attempted to endanger the sky pillar supporting the starry canopy, an act that, if achieved, would have brought about the destruction of the world. There you go, there's a T-pillar. And there's a little fox. Oh, little fox on the T-pillar. Someone realised that only by allaying people's fears regarding the immense potency of the cosmic trickster could stability be truly restored to the world. And whenever this supernatural creature returned to the heavens in the guise of a comet, seen as a visible manifestation of the sky fox or sky wolf, it would be shaman's role to enter the sky world and counter its baleful influence, a primary motivation I see as behind the construction of Göbekli Tepe.
Göbekli Tepe.
It's hard for us to imagine how important the night sky would have been to civilizations past. We're pretty much indoors all the time at night, aren't we? We don't sleep outside very often. And even when we are outside, light pollution causes problems with seeing the stars. But if you're ever out and you look up and you see all the constellations and the stars, they're mesmerizing. Imagine if that's all you had at night. It's dark, you've got a torch, you've got a light, you've got a fire pit or whatever. All you've got to entertain yourself with the sky and the stars, and how mesmerizing that would be. And you can imagine and you can see why these civilizations and these peoples created stories and used the sky as a way of telling stories. So a lot of this makes sense, but it's just a lot that's very circumspect. There you go, little fox. It's got a little willy. Everything has a willy. Don't know what that is, but it's got a willy. Womb chambers. Yet there were clearly other reasons for the construction of Göbekli Tepe. Its stone enclosure served most likely as a womb chambers, places where the shaman entered into primal state, like the experience before birth and passing between the enclosure twin central pillars. These enormous monoliths, sometimes 18 feet, 5.5 meters in height, and weighing as much as 16.5 US tons, 15 metric tons, apiece, acted as otherworldly ports to invisible realms, true stargates in every sense of the word. And their target? The setting down of the local horizon of Deneb, Cygnus' brightest star, which marked the start of the Milky Way's Great Rift, a role played by Deneb as early as 16,500 to 14,000 BC. At this time, Deneb acted as the pole star, the star closest to the celestial pole during any particular epoch. Even after Deneb ceased to be the pole star around 14,000 BC due to the effects of precession, the slow wobble of the Earth's axis, according to the cycle of approximately 26,000 years, its place was taken by another Cygnus star, Delta Cygni, which held the position until around 13,000 BC. I don't know if I need to explain that. If you understand it, you do. If you don't worry. Basically, they're using the stars to align what they're doing on the ground. So this is Göbekli Tepe. They are put into different things. These E and F, I think, if I remember correctly, seem to have been done much, much later, and not necessarily in the same way these ones were done, or with the same fervorance. I don't know if that's a word. Should be. If it's not, I'm copyrighting that bad boy. After this time, and as you see they're all kind of pointing in different directions. And there's a reason for that. See how they're sort of slowly evolving their direction. So this one's pointing over here, this one's pointing over here, this one's pointing over here, this one's pointing over here. You get it. After this time, the role of the pole star went to Vega in the constellation of Lyra, the celestial Lyra. Lyra? When around 11,000 BC, Vega moved out of range of the celestial pole. No bright star replaced it for several thousand years. This meant that when Göbekli Tepe was constructed, around 9,500, 9,000 BC, there was no pole star. It was for this reason when Deneb and the Milky Way's Great Rift retained their significance as the main point of entry to the sky world, making it the primary destination of the shaman. Standing stones erected in the northwestern sections of the walls in two key enclosures at Göbekli Tepe bore large holes that framed the setting of the Deneb each night, highlighting the star's significance to the Göbekli builders, and showing the precise direction in which the shaman should access the sky world. So as you can see, it's pointing to certain stars. Cosmic knowledge, final abandonment. Do we really need to? No. This article is actually just a really nice simplified version of the book. Final abandonment. Over a period of around 1,500 years, 20 or more major enclosures were constructed with the gradual emerging occupational mound at Göbekli Tepe. Old enclosures were periodically decommissioned, deconsecrated, and covered over, quite literally killed, at the end of their useful lives. New structures were built to replace them, but as time went on they became much smaller in construction, until eventually the cell-like buildings were no larger than a family-sized jacuzzi, with pillars no more than 5 feet, 1.5 meters in height. Somehow the world had changed, and the impetus for creating gigantic stone temples with enormous twin monoliths at their centres was no longer there. They just got lazy, didn't they? Sometime around 8,000 BC, the last remaining enclosures were covered over with imported earth, stone chippings and refuse matter, and the site abandoned to the elements. All that remained was the enormous belly-like mound that became an ideal expression of the fact that the stone enclosures had originally been seen, not just as star portals to another world, but also as womb-like chambers, where the souls of the shamans, or indeed the spirits of the dead, could quite literally journey to the source of the creation, located somewhere in the vicinity of Cygnus constellation. It was a concept dimly remembered in the name Göbekli Tepe, which means, in Turkish, navel-like hill. Serpent-headed people. This is where it veers away from Göbekli Tepe. Even after Göbekli Tepe was abandoned, its memory, and those of the ruling elite behind its construction, lingered in among the Halaf and Ubaid peoples who flourished during the latter half of the Neolithic Age, 6,000 to 4,100 BC. Like their predecessors, they gained control of an all-important obsidian trade at places such as Bingöl Mountain and Nemrut Dağ, close to the Lake Van. Their elites, who would appear to have belonged to specific family groups, artificially deformed their already elongated heads, not only to denote their status in society, but also quite possibly to mimic the perceived appearance of great ancestors. Maybe ancient aliens. Seem to have possessed extremely long heads and faces. It is very possible that these great ancestors, who are perhaps represented by the snake or reptilian headed clay figurines found in several Ubaid cemeteries. The rise of an Anunnaki. The elite of the Halaf and Ubaid were probably the forerunners of the god-kings who ruled the first city-states down on the Mesopotamian plain, which eventually became the civilizations of Sumer, Akkad, Assyria, and Babylon. Their scribes, preserved in cuneiform, write in the ruling dynasty's mythical history, in which the founders of the Neolithic Revelation are known as the Anunnaki, the gods of heaven and earth. Their birthplace was said to have been the Dooku. Every time he said Dooku, all I thought of was Star Wars. A primeval mound located at the summit of a world mountain called Karsag, or Hersag, and now identified with both Göbekli Tepe and Bingöl Mountain. Here the Anunnaki are said to have given humankind the first sheep and grain, a memory almost certainly of the introduction of animal husbandry and agriculture at the time of the Neolithic Revolution, which occurred in the same region as Göbekli Tepe around 9,000 to 8,000 BC. The Anunnaki are occasionally likened to serpents, reflecting the snake-like appearance of Göbekli Tepe's ruling elite, as well as those in the latter Halaf and Ubaid cultures. The coming of the Watchers. Then we come to the impact Göbekli Tepe had on the earliest Semitic peoples of northern Mesopotamia. Their oral traditions would one day be carried into the land of Canaan by the first Israelites and recorded down in religious works such as the Book of Enoch. That one gets brought up so much in these kind of these worlds that we are inhabiting, and the Book of Giants. In these so-called Enochian texts, the prime movers behind the construction of Göbekli Tepe and the subsequent Neolithic revolution are, it's implying here that Book of Enoch talks about Göbekli Tepe. It doesn't. And the subsequent Neolithic revolution are described as human angels called Watchers, who are extremely tall, wear coats of feathers, possess visages like vipers, that is, extremely long facial hair, and are occasionally described as serpents. Indeed, one Watcher is named as a serpent that beguiled Eve in the Garden of Eden. 200 of their number are said to have descended among mortal kind and taken mortal wives who produced giant offspring, which we talked about, the Nephilim. Or Nephilim, I don't know actually how to pronounce that. According to the Book of Enoch, the human angels revealed to their wives the secrets of arts of heaven, many of which correspond with the number of firsts for humanity that took place in Southwest Asia in the wake of the Neolithic Revolution. Other Watchers a memory of the appearance in Southwest Anatolia of the Swiderian groups whose striking appearance fits the vivid description of the Watchers offered in the Enochian literature. If so, then does it suggest the strange appearance of both the Watchers and the Anunnaki, with their serpent-like faces, might in part be down to them being Neanderthal human hybrids, were they the true founders of civilization? So a lot of Europeans have a small percentage of Neanderthal DNA still in them, so we did breed with them a lot. How much, though, is debated. Like, were these people more Neanderthal? The Rivers of Paradise, here we go, this is where it goes full biblical. A memory of this crucial epoch in human development is preserved perhaps in the stories of Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden. According to the book of Genesis, this was located at the source of the 4 rivers of paradise. 3 can be easily identified as the Euphrates, Tigris, and Araxes, the biblical Gihon, which all rise in eastern Anatolia. What is more, 2 of the rivers, the Euphrates and the Araxes, take their rise in the vicinity of the Bengal Mountain, one of the primary sources of obsidian, located just 200 miles from Göbekli Tepe. See, I don't think that's close, personally. Local tradition asserts that Bengal was also the source of the 4th river of paradise, the Pison. While ancient writers recorded that the true source of the Tigris was the same region, Armenian tradition also speaks of Bengal Mountain being the place of the gods and the summit of the world from which emerge the 4 great rivers that carry waters of a life to every part of the world. Everything points towards Bengal Mountain being not only the birthplace of the Anunnaki, but also the site of the mountains of paradise and the place of descent of the Watchers in the Book of Enoch. The Secrets of Adam. Gnostic writings, such as the various tracts found in the cave at Nag Hammadi in Egypt in 1945, speak repeatedly of the so-called secrets of Adam being passed to his son Seth before his father's death. Seth is said to have recorded them either in book form or on tablets or pillars called steles. These were hidden in or on a holy mountain, existing in the vicinity of the terrestrial paradise, so that they might survive a coming cataclysm of fire and flood, a memory almost certainly of the Younger Dryas impact event. Called variously Taraxio, Sier, or Sur, this mountain is linked to the early Christian tradition, with the site inhabited by the generations of Adam following the expulsion of the first couple from paradise. So what are the secrets of Adam, and where might they be found today? Do they pertain to the manner in which Göbekli Tepe was built to curtail the castrophobia rife among the indigenous peoples of the region in the wake of the Younger Dryas impact event? Had this information been given to the local hunter-gatherers of the region by incoming Swiderian groups, whose elongated heads and long ancestry was connected with their origins as Neanderthal human hybrids? Were their deeds mythologized into the stories of the human angels called Watchers found in the Book of Enoch and the Anunnaki gods alluded to in Mesopotamian tradition? As angels ourselves, where exactly Where exactly was Charaxio, or Mount Seir, where the books of Seth containing the secrets of Adam await discovery? This is the quest I embark upon in the second half of Göbekli Tepe Genesis of the Gods. It just seems, for me, that seems away from Göbekli Tepe, but with the result being the discovery of eastern Taurus Mountains of a forgotten Armenian monastery overlooking the traditional site of the Garden of Eden. Before its destruction at the time of the Armenian genocide in 1915, this video is blocked in Turkey, the monks have preserved archaic traditions concerning the Garden of Eden and the existence of a holy relic and incredible religious significance. It's just a tree and a bit of wood, basically. Confirmation of the presence of this holy relic at the monastery, which in the 7th century was given a special decree of immunity from attack signed by the Prophet Muhammad himself, reveals that what could be Adam's ultimate secret, the manner in which we as mortals can re-enter paradise and become as once we were, like angels ourselves. It is a story of discovery I would like now to share with you. Yeah. That's a nice one. Published in 1783 from History of Saints. So we've got Asia Minor, which is Turkey. There's Egypt. Arabi. Cypri. Armenia. See how Armenia slowly... Oh, look, there's Eden. There it is. Smack bang in the middle of Armenia. Good for them. Right, let's read a little bit about Mr. Andrew himself. Andrew Collins is a historical writer and explorer. That's pretty cool in this day and age. In the United Kingdom. Living in the United Kingdom. I'm pretty sure he's American. He is the author of more than a dozen books, or maybe he's Canadian, that challenges the way we perceive the past, including From Ashes of Angels, which established the Watchers... Oh, he did that first. I did not know that. The Watchers of the Book of Enoch and the Anunnaki, the Sumerian texts of the memory of shamanic elite that catalyzed the Neolithic Revolution in the Near East at the end of the last ice age. Doesn't that sound familiar? It's almost like he's just stuck Göbekli Tepe on the front of his old book. Gateway to Atlantis, which is the one I have read previously, which pinned down the source of Plato's Atlantis to the Caribbean island of Cuba. I did remember it right. And the Bahamian archipelago. Tutankhamun, the Exodus Conspiracy. I would like to read that, which reveals the truth behind the discovery of Tutankhamun's famous tomb. That'd be good. Cygnus Mystery. I don't care for that. In 2008, Andrew and colleague Nigel Skinner Simpson discovered a previously unrecorded cave complex beneath the pyramids of Giza, which has brought him worldwide acclaim. It is told in the story Beneath the Pyramids. Oh, is that the one that happened? Yeah. They put a camera down there recently. Yeah, very interesting. Andrew's latest book, Göbekli Tepe Genesis of the Gods, is a culmination of 20 years study on the origins. It really is a combination of about 30 years, I think. Of the Watchers and Nephilim in the Book of Enoch and the Anunnaki of Sumerian myth and legend. Cool. So, this, as you can see, that's not everybody's theory, but this is the main theory around why this is so popular at the moment. Göbekli Tepe is old, and it's weird. It's out of place, seemingly, in the historical context of the world, especially the peoples who lived around there at that time. And what we can do as humans is explain that away by picking stuff from the Bible, which is all. I love this. I know I'm poking holes in it and making fun, but I actually love this. Atlanteans. We could do lost civilizations. We can do ancient aliens. We can do different people from the Bible. There are lots of different ways that we can go, this is here because of this. And it's brilliant. And it has been, I think I described it as a muse earlier, and it really has been a muse for so many of these types of authors. In a similar way that places like, or ideas like Atlantis have been in the past. So, but that's not where it ends. There are articles and articles on this, and we're not going to go through them all because I just really don't want to. but you can see how this is feeding a generation of writers. Karahan Tepe, Göbekli Tepe's 12,000-year-old sister site, begins to reveal its secrets. Again, there are... it's like those oof meme with the little sculptures. So there are... photos are always by Sampha. Sampha's his wife. It's always nice to see. Oh, there he is. This might have been when he was filming his Netflix documentary, which is very interesting to watch it. So as you can see, there are lots of others, lots of different sites with some really cool, interesting artwork. That's great. I love it. Talks about it extensively in his book, Magician of the Gods. So yeah, there could be more. Göbekli Tepe might not be an isolated incident. Göbekli Tepe, image on the Sumerian tablet. Doesn't that look like a T-shaped pillar? There we go, that's that. Megalithic origins. Ancient connections between Göbekli Tepe and Peru. There's Göbekli Tepe. Is there pictures of Peru? That's just Graham having a good time. Cup marks and pillar base of Göbekli Tepe. Ah, yes. Stones. Yep. Stones. They really do clutch at straws. Humans, I think, are quite boring. I think we do the same things. And a lot of the time when we think of something new, it's not new. It's been done before. And it's funny, but this shows up in art and ideas, even as old as this. There are lots of different examples of that throughout history. So sometimes there are films that come out at the same time, but are pretty much the same film. It's like, how did they both get made independently from each other? Usually without any realization that the other companies are doing the same thing. Some inventions are put down to two people because they came up with them in isolation at roughly the same time. Humanity is very boring sometimes. But yes, that's a long 7,928 miles. What could connect them? Peru and Turkey. Ancient aliens. Göbekli Tepe and its connection to France, a little closer to home. So, yeah, some more stones that look like the stones that were the stones. That's a long willy, that is. Oh man, look at that. He's got a sash and a belt. That's cool. Everybody loves Doggerland. Where's Doggerland? I saw Doggerland. My brain saw it. My head didn't. Where is it? Doggerland is the bridge. There we go. This was the age of the Doggerland. The bridge that connected Europe and Great Britain. Göbekli Tepe and the Atlantis twins. Plato, Rosetta Stone of the Neolithic. This one just looks like it's right, and I'm not. Oh no. Oh, look at that. That's awesome. Look how big that is. It doesn't even fit on the page. Okay. Yes, H. I think that might be H, as in H from Steps. Interesting connection there. Whoa, that's cool. I mean, oh no, that's horrible. It's gross. Look, it's an idol. Göbekli Tepe, temples communicating ancient cosmic geography. Ooh, geography. Prominent ridge. So they found it in the 60s, but it wasn't until the 90s that Schmidt did it. Is this an old one? 2013. Ooh, Dr. Paul D. Burley. You could have got in there before Mr. Collins, but you didn't. So this is an early article on it. And as you can see, a lot of these stones, and we'll look through the pictures in a minute of the UNESCO site. In fact, we'll do that next. Shows, really detailed illustrations. It's really nice. People have been awkwardly collating them to the various constellations. And just because we call the constellations based on the Greek and Roman, I think, zodiac signs, obviously, when you're looking at this, it could be anything. So, that being a Scorpio and a Scorpion for us could be something else for some other groups of people, and they've been trying to collate them and put them together. Okay, so let's have a quick look at the nice pictures of the Göbekli Tepe. This is from UNESCO World Heritage Convention, UNESCO.org. Göbekli Tepe, Located from the Jermus Mountains of southern eastern Anatolia, this property presents monumental round oval and rectangular megalithic structures erected by hunter-gatherers. Really? In the pre-pottery Neolithic age between 9600 and 8200 BCE. And that stands for before Common Era, which basically just means BC. These monuments were probably used in connection with rituals, most likely of a funerary nature. Distinctive T-shaped pillars are carved with the images of the animals, providing... Oh, how embarrassing. Excuse me, my phone is going off. This happens every single stream. Apologies. Distinctive T-shaped pillars are carved with images of wild animals, providing insight into the way of life and beliefs of people living in Upper Mesopotamia about 11,500 years ago. And here are, if I click on it, will it let me? Okay, it's going to be really nice and awkward. This is a lovely gallery. Well done, UNESCO. Actually, you know, it's pretty good. So you can see it from above, and what they've done as well is they've covered it, which is really cool. So let me put me up here, and then we can do it. Okay, cool. So you can see them at night lit up. They've used, because it was all buried in earth, they've used wood to stabilize some of them. So obviously that's not original, but you can see from above the extent of these sites, and also how in the middle of nowhere they really are. So yeah, they're using wood to prop some of them up. But this is older than Stonehenge. You have to remember that. Older than the pyramids. And then some of the imagery is very interesting. And they're all called sort of different things. So this is Pillar 43. But some of them are like the Fox Pillar or the, I don't know, Pillar 18. You know, good names. Building E. That's one of the really rubbish ones that we talked about, but ones that must have been done much later. As one of the foxes. Building F, again, one of the smaller buildings. Building G. Building H. And Pillar 56 in Building H. Low reliefs of wild animals, reptiles, and birds. And some of these birds, people are putting them down to flightless birds, and maybe the dodo. Dodos were indigenous to Mauritius, and then we killed them. But the idea that people in Turkey might have known about the dodo is odd. And you can get some various interesting links between them. Yes, right. Let's have a quick look at Wikipedia, just to see if it has any information about some things we'd be interested in. Usually on this show we start on Wikipedia because it's a nice jumping off point, but today it's not really worked out like that. So Göbekli Tepe, Potbelly Hill, or Naval Hill, is a Neolithic archaeological site in southeastern Anatolia region of Turkey, and dated very, very old. It is the world's oldest known megaliths, so large structures. And it was during the Neolithic Revolution. Klaus Schmidt is the German archaeologist. Let's have a quick look at him. He is unfortunately dead, but he was the person who discovered it, or rediscovered it. And he did it not necessarily on a whim, but it could have gone either way, basically. This wasn't like a real big sort of like, oh my god, look what we found, we need to do... It was sort of like okay, fair enough, So it was first noted in the survey of 63. It probably would have been, rediscovered again if Schmidt hadn't have done it, but we don't know. As of 2021, less than 5% of the site has been excavated. Luckily, what we can do nowadays is ground penetrating radar. We can kind of see if stuff's there before we excavate it, but the fact that so much is still yet to be revealed is really interesting. Again, this is all going to be mainstream science and archaeology. Here you can see the different various tepes, which tepe means hill. So you've got Göbekli, and then you've also got the various others. Known PPN sites. What does PPN stand for? Pre-Pottery Neolithic B. Of course it does. How did I not know that? Stone Hills, yeah. It's a very barren landscape, but it's very pretty. Radiocarbon dating shows the early exposed structure of a Göbekli Tepe were built around 9,500 to 9,000 BCE. So radiocarbon dating gets it's one of those ones that kind of gets better over time. So that may be we may have to re-establish that in the future. Architecture. Oh, some really nice pictures. Cool. Enclosure A, B, C. This is the one that I think is underground. Oh yeah, look, you can see the little walkways now that they're built so that people can go view it, which is really clever. I think Stonehenge needs to be outdoors, but the fact you can't go look around it and walk around it now, you can only see it from a distance, is kind of disappointing. This is really cool that you can kind of get really close to it. You know, I don't think I'd want to be down here with these supported by Turkish builders wood. Tell. Does tell mean just the what it was filled with? Backfill? Apart from the tell, there is an incised. What does tell mean? Am I being really dumb? Probably. It does happen. More. It's not giving me much information. I'm sure it means something really important. Write in the comments if you know what tell means. Layer 3, layer 2, so it's the various when they were digging down. Pillars. You got some ducks, or maybe dodos. A fox, or maybe a dodo. Another fox. Possible feline. A vulture stone. You can see it's all nice indoors now. Enclosure D in the museum. Engraved arms. Oh yeah, lots of other objects were found, and they might have been broken off from larger sculptures, which is really cool. Including totems. This is really cool. I'd love to go there. I'd love to go see it. There's Mr. Schmidt. Conservation. 2018, it was donated a UNESCO World Heritage Site. So that's really good. Cool. Yeah, archaeoastronomy, that's the one. So let's have a look at what the scientific community thinks about Mr. Hancock and Mr. Collins' claims. No, there wasn't an advanced civilization 12,000 years ago. Well, that sums that up nicely. Graham Hancock is an audacious self-taught person. I knew what that meant. Being an autodidact myself. It sounds like an insult, doesn't it? Who believes that long before ancient Mesopotamia, Babylonia, and Egypt, there existed an even more glorious civilization. One so thoroughly wiped out by a comet strike around 12,000 years ago that nearly all evidence of its existence vanished, leaving only the faintest traces, including, Hancock thinks, a cryptic warning that such a celestial catastrophe could happen to us. All this is woven into a narrative entitled Magicians of the Gods from 2015. An interesting book. I really enjoyed it. I enjoy all his books. I don't think they're necessarily very good, but they're easy to read and they're enjoyable, especially for this kind of stuff. They're a great entry point for this kind of information gathering. I listened to the audio edition read by the author, whose British accent and breathless, revelatory storytelling style are confessedly compelling. Yes, they are. Well put. But is it true? I'm sceptical. First, no matter how devastating an extraterrestrial impact might be, are we to believe that after centuries of flourishing every last tool, potsherd, article of clothing, and presumably from an advanced civilization, writing, metallurgy, and other technologies, not to mention trash, was erased? Inconceivable! Second, Hancock's impact hypothesis, well, not necessarily erased, just not necessarily found yet. I think that's usually the point that they make. Second, Hancock's impact hypothesis comes from scientists who first proposed it in 2007 as an explanation for the North American megafaunal extinction around that time, and has been the subject of vigorous scientific debate. it has not fared well. In addition to the lack of any impact craters determined to have occurred around that time anywhere in the world, the radiocarbon dates of the layer of carbon, soot, charcoal, nanodiamonds, microspherules, and iridium assert to have been the result of this catastrophic event vary wildly before and after the megafaunal extinction, anywhere from 14,000 to 10,000 years ago. Further, although 37 mammal genera were extinct in North America, while most other species survived and flourished at the same time, 52 mammal genera were extinct in South America, presumably not caused by the impact. These extinctions, in fact, were timed with human arrival, thereby supporting the widely accepted overhunting hypothesis. Third, Hancock grounds his case primarily in the arguments from ignorance. Because scientists cannot explain X, then Y is a legitimate theory, or an argument from personal incredulity. Because I cannot explain X, then my Y theory is valid. This is the type of God of the gaps reasoning that creationists employ. Only in Hancock's case, the gods are the magicians who brought civilization. The problem here is twofold. Scientists do not have a good explanation for Hancock's X, for example, the pyramids, the Great Sphinx, even if they are not in total agreement. Do have a good explanation. Freudian slip. Ultimately, one's theory must rest on positive evidence in favour of it, not just negative evidence against accepted theories. Sure, but writing books about it is surely acceptable. Hancock's biggest X is Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, with its megalithic T-shaped 7 to 10 ton stone pillars cut and hauled from limestone quarries which were not nearby as well, and dated to around 11,000 years ago, when humans lived as hunter-gatherers without, presumably, the know-how, skills, labour to produce them. Ergo, Hancock concludes, at the very least it would mean that some as yet unknown and unidentified people, Atlanteans, somewhere in the world had already mastered all the arts and attributes of the high civilization more than 12,000 years ago in the depths of the last ice age, and had sent out emissaries around the world to spread the benefits of their knowledge. This sounds romantic, but it is the bigotry of low expectations. Who is to say that hunter-gatherers are or are not capable of doing? Plus, Göbekli
Tepe.
Was a ceremonial religious site, not a city. There is no evidence that anyone lived there. Moreover, there is no domesticated animal bones, no metal tools, no inscriptions or writing, and not even pottery. All products were much later high civilizations produced. Fourth, Hancock has spent decades in his vision quest to find the sages who brought us civilization. Yet decades of searching have failed to produce enough evidence to convince archaeologists that the standard timeline of human history needs major revision. Hancock's plaint is that mainstream science is stuck in a uniformitarian model of slow, gradual change and so cannot accept a catastrophic explanation. Not true. From the origin of the universe, the Big Bang, to the origin of the moon, Big Collision, to the origin of lunar craters, meteor strikes, to the demise of the dinosaurs, asteroid impact, to the numerous sudden downfalls of civilization documented by Jared Diamond in his 2005 book Collapse, Catastrophism is alive and well in mainstream science. The real magicians are the scientists who have worked this all out. Oh, that sounds like a big plug for this book, doesn't it? It's not a plug for this book. Honest. Do you reckon that's his, cousin or something? Oh, I've got different names. It's married cousin. Okay, another one, just to finish off today. Pseudo-archaeological claims. So this is a blog, but it's on an educational University of Oregon site. The overall consensus among pseudo-archaeologists is that Göbekli Tepe was built by the survivors of a lost city. He lived through a global catastrophe. I really do have problems with catastrophic. There we go. That word. Event eliminated all traces of human civilization prior to the Ice Age. There are two popular versions of this pseudo-archaeological claim. The first being that Göbekli Tepe was created by the survivors of Atlantis. Yes! And the second being that the biblical story of Noah's Ark describes carrying the survivors of the large catastrophic event to Göbekli Tepe. Graham Hancock, a popular author and pseudoscientist, is a prominent proponent of the theory that Göbekli Tepe was built by the survivors of the lost city of Atlantis 11,600 years ago. Hancock claims that people... I think that's highlighted because it's from when I googled it. Sometimes when you Google stuff and you click on it, it highlights the page for you. Hancock claims that the people of Atlantis survived a comet striking the Earth at the end of the last ice age, eliminating all traces of advanced civilization, and that the survivors of Atlantis then settled among the hunter-gatherers in Turkey and together built Göbekli Tepe. Also, the survivors probably went elsewhere in lots of different places. It wasn't just Göbekli Tepe. Similarly, the Noah's Ark theory also describes a comet striking the Earth at the end of the last ice age, causing cataclysmic flooding and a sea level rise. In the biblical story of Noah's Ark, Noah was instructed by God to build an ark for all the species of animals so that species may survive an incoming cataclysmic flood. Those who believe that the descendants of Noah's Ark settled in Göbekli Tepe believe the biblical flood was caused by a comet and that the mountains of Ararat, described in the biblical story, referred to Göbekli Tepe. Not quite. They refer to places near. You know, Andrew Collins' article where it said like 200 miles near. That's basically what he's talking about. Furthermore, the Noah's Ark story describes the creation of an altar. Altar? Why would I say altar? An altar. Which some believe refers to the stone structures in Göbekli Tepe. Problems with these claims. Over the years, Göbekli Tepe has been the main focal point for pseudo-archaeological experts as they try to discover these mysterious and ancient groups. Hancock, sorry, I got my picture's in the way, isn't it? God damn it, Alex. Hancock, a proponent of pseudo-archaeologist, a prominent pseudo-archaeologist, concluded that the exercise, oh my God, Alex, existence. I've given up caffeine for Lent. Can you tell? Of these stones means that at the very least meant that there must be an undiscovered group that were highly skilled in all the arts of a highly functioning civilization. The problems with this way of thinking are it draws conclusions from various places and sources without any real evidence. Not only that, but it also deprives past civilizations of their cultural achievements by informing people that these works could not have been created by a group of hunter-gatherers, but must be attributed to some highly advanced group that has left zero trace of their existence. If we are truly to believe an ancient city existed with such advanced technology that predates even the Egyptians, we would expect to find evidence of domesticated animal bones and metal tools of some sort, as well as inscriptions and pottery. I think the point that most of the people who are pro this would say is that because of the cataclysm, because of whatever happened, they had to leave behind all of that, and all they had with themselves. And maybe there will be a smoking gun at some point where they find just a single metal tool that was saved, or something that was kept and is in the strata of that era. Background information and real research. To get better familiar with Göbekli Tepe, let's first give a description of what Göbekli Tepe actually is. So it's located 10 miles outside of a city in Turkey, which I'm not going to pronounce, and it's the oldest known man-made place of worship and dates back all the way to 10,000 BCE. The builders who constructed the site predated any forms of writing, metalwork and pottery. Many of the 10-foot tall pillars that once formed a circle as a complete site can still be seen today, with the carvings of gazelles, foxes, snakes, lions and other characters as well. Something that archaeologists have continually found at the site have been animal bone remains that date back to the same period as they believe Göbekli Tepe was built. Difficult to do because, like we said, it was backfilled. So contamination might be a problem. This really helps archaeologists argue their points as it fits in perfect with the belief that Göbekli Tepe was used for religious feasts. Another frequent find that archaeologists make here are tools made from flint that they have been able to date back also to the time period of construction of the Göbekli Tepe. These tools are thought to be used to cut the limestone that the pillars are made out of. With all these cold facts, I'm learning so many new words today. Neck, throat. Part of a garment. Cool? Maybe it's meant to say cool? Who wouldn't want to give... Yeah, or all these cool facts, who wouldn't want to go visit Turkey and see Göbekli Tepe for themselves? Yes, I would. For many years now, archaeologists from around the world have travelled to Göbekli Tepe to study the site and gain a better understanding of the significance behind it and how it was constructed. Recently, archaeologists have discovered that the ancient people who built Göbekli Tepe put countless amount of detail into both planning and execution of the plan with accuracy were made possible by the conceptualization basic geometric ideas and methods such as circle, centre, and compass arm. Archaeologists were able to find out by using standard deviation mapping to find the centre points of each of the 4 enclosures at the site, and found that in each enclosure the centre point identified was the point at which the standard deviation value of the group of distance to the points marking the peripheral pillars was minimal. I know what that means, they just found the centre, but the way they've worded it is just over the top. This proves that the ancient people who not only built but also spent time in Göbekli Tepe were much more sophisticated than many people think humans were at the time. This plays right into one of the main problems with most archaeological topics, is that the common belief that ancient people did not possess the knowledge or skills to create all the wonderful things that have actually been proven to be from them. That's not a bad way to end it. It's very hard for us in modern day to go, even with our cranes and stuff and all our modern knowledge, it would be very hard for us to build the pyramids, or Göbekli Tepe, or to raise this, or the Easter Island heads. It would be very difficult for us to do that, and it would, but given enough time, humans are very ingenious, and although our knowledge is built from our predecessors, that doesn't stop people in the past being very clever and ingenious. But I think I've covered Göbekli Tepe enough here, and I'm just going to leave the last words to the one and only Graham Hancock. What do you have to say?
Göbekli Tepe.
Perfect. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you again next time.
Göbekli Tepe.